Now, if you didn't already know, the year 1998 was one of my favorite years to be on the planet Earth. I just loved it. You had to be there, players. I was a fresh-faced young college kid. Yeah, I'm old. But it was a time of exploration and celebration, and it was just dope stuff everywhere. You just turned around and everything was dope. Gas was $1. I'm not joking. Gas was $1. The Simpsons hadn't started sucking yet. 25 years later, what's happening? But now that we're 25 years removed from all that nostalgia, I figured that it's time to look back at one of my favorite years in music, the year 1998. And today we're going to celebrate that nostalgia by looking at the 10 best R&B albums from one of my favorite years of all time. Come back with me to the time machine and let's go back to when the music was dope and everybody was dropping heat. Come on. And thank you for joining me for another edition. It's time again for the Soul and Stereo sessions right here on YouTube. It's always good when I get to hang out with my peoples and when you get to hang out with your boy, because we got to talk about the dope music today. So as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about the year 1998. If you've been following us all year long on soulandstereo.com, and if you haven't, step your reading comprehension up. Go check out the site. Dope stuff over there. We've been doing a 1998 Rewind series where every month we're looking back at albums that are celebrating their 25th anniversary this year, and that has been a bunch of fun for me because it's been me, fans, it's been readers of the Soul and Stereo sessions coming through talking about their favorite albums, and I was like, let's show that love here on YouTube. So we're going to talk about the 10 best R&B albums of 1998. Don't worry, we'll get to rap soon enough. Trust me, this was an era where I was dropping those 5-star reviews like the Salt Bay. Everybody was dropping heat. But before we get to dropping this video, let's do me a favor. Let's do some business first. Take a moment and hit that like button for your boy. Then take another moment and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because it's going to show us some love. It's going to get this video, that YouTube mojo juice working. Gonna be more eyes on the video, more content for y'all coming. And of course, when the video wraps up, make sure you hit that share as well so we can get the good word out. But enough of me yakking. Let's talk about one of my favorite years of all time, 1998. And we're gonna do that right now. So put the battery in that Tamagotchi, player. Go get you some Pokemon cards. We are going to do it up R&B style, 1998. Alright, kicking off the countdown at number 10 is Faith Evans' Keep the Faith. Faith has talked in the past about how this was a difficult record for her. This album was coming right off the heels of the murder of our guy, the Notorious B.I.G., her estranged husband at the time. Estranged, but that's still her husband. Still the father of her son, and she had a lot of emotions to get through, and you can really tell that in this album if you couldn't tell by the album title. To be honest, I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the singles that came out, but what really kept this album together were the dope album cuts. There's lots of emotion throughout this, and Faith, in my opinion, is one of the best singers, vocalists, and writers of her era. Maybe of all time. If you want to get with it for real, I want to shake the table. Maybe she's up there for all time. But this album it comes off of a very big album that she had high expectations to clear. She didn't quite clear it, but for what it is one of the best of its era and high on the list of Faith Evans projects. Coming in at number 9, it's my boys, my namesakes, Player. Cheers to you. It's pretty obvious, and most of y'all know by now, that I'm a huge fan of the Super Friends. And if you don't know who that is the late 90s collective of artists like Missy Elliott, Timbaland, Aaliyah, Genuine, and of course Player, Magoo, and a few others who made up that group of eclectic artists that just absolutely changed the shape and scope of sound in the 90s and beyond. I'm serious. We don't have artists today that absolutely do and remake everything. I see y'all cultural resets. Y'all won't doing it like the Super Friends were. And Player, to me, always got kind of the short end of the stick when it comes to recognition, because the artists who make up this group, we talking about Digital Black, Smokey Diggler, and my man Static Major. Not only are they great vocalists, as is shown here on this album, the harmonies are magnifique, but not only do they have the great vocals behind them, they have the production and the songwriting. As we know, Static would go on to be recognized in later years as a great producer for many artists before we tragically lost him. But don't sleep on Smokey, because he's got some joints too, as well as Black. These are three talented brothers, and it really shines in this album. The second half specifically, the writing of the songs is the writing I miss today. It's so soulful, and the harmonies are wonderful. This album is bittersweet though, because when you look back at it, we've lost Static, we've lost Magoo recently, we've lost Aaliyah. So many of these great artists who are on this album feature are no longer with us. I wish we could give them the flowers that they deserve. If y'all won't, I will. I love Player, and I love Cheers to You. Coming in at number 8, Old Nippy, Whitney Houston, My Love Is Your Love. Whitney, if you look back at her trajectory through the 90s, even though she's celebrated as an incredible vocalist, we really don't talk much about her albums. And if you look back during that era, she was just a soundtrack queen. She's got The Preacher's Wife, The Bodyguard, Waiting to Exhale. She's on everybody's soundtrack. So that the late 90s, she decided to get back to her albums. And I've talked about it before, but we don't really talk a lot about her albums. We talk about the big singles, we talk about the big voice. We rarely talk about the albums. And to me, this is probably, I'm gonna say it's her best, but is one of her most, it's my favorite and one of the most recognizable in My Love Is Your Love. I love it because of the consistency. She worked with producers of the era, Darkchild, Missy Elliott, and so many others who were able to capture her sound, but bring it into a new era so she could showcase those vocals without sounding like the next woman. She nailed it on every track here. And even though we don't give Missy, always give Missy love, we don't give Whitney the love that she deserves on a lot of her albums. If we're talking about just standalone projects, you got to give this one some love. We know the singles. We know it's not right. That's okay. We know that she's going through my man's credit card receipts, getting him in trouble. But album from album, song for song, this is some of the best work she's done. Coming in at number 7, those Dru Hill boys, Enter the Dru. For some Dru Hill fans, and I know there's a bunch of y'all out there, this is the definitive Dru Hill release. This one and the debut, real close to me. The 96, I will give the 96 one a little bit of an edge, but this album is pretty dope as well. They, at this point in Dru Hill's career, after that magnificent debut, it was just time to knock off that sophomore jinx, and we'll see that from several artists here on this list. This was their time to show and prove, and they absolutely proved. What Dru Hill does best, in my opinion, is come together as a collective. And we saw that on the tracks here. Look, I'm still mad. It's been 25 years. Where is the Beauty video? Where is the Beauty? They had a remix. They had Case on a remix. Where is the video? Stop playing with me. Give me the Beauty video. But since we are just destined to never get that video, what we have here is a very complete body of work from my boys. And again, to this day, it's an album that has defined them. When they have Dru Hill fans arguing on the internet, which is what the internet clearly was made for, it's always this one versus the first one. Again, I go with the first, but when it comes to albums from 1998, this Dru Hill album is very hard to beat. A strong contender in their legacy, a jewel in their crown, if you may say, for the Dru Hill boys. Coming in at number 6 is Maxwell Embryo. So this album, I have learned, has had more appreciation today than it did back in the day. And I'll tell you why. Coming off of his debut, the Urban Hang Suite, everyone just loved it. It was a shift as we were moving into the neo soul era with D'Angelo and Erykah Badu leading the way. That album was kind of the holy trinity of the early neo soul movement. When we came back for Embryo, Maxwell switched the game up on us. Instead of that soulful funkiness, we got some outer space stuff. Like, this dude sounds like he's singing on the bottom of the ocean in a good way, not a current vocalist way. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Open your mouth up so I can hear you. But the atmospheric tone of that album just threw some fans off. Some people were like, what the heck is this? And at first, when I first heard it, I was a little taken aback too. But if you listen to it with more mature ears, especially in 2023, you will see how ahead of its time this album was and how it does what so many R&B albums try to do today, except it does it so much more. It's a more focus to it and more purpose and more direction. The writing is better. The writing is almost poetic on this thing. The production is literally out of this world sometimes, but he doesn't lose himself in the vocals. He doesn't really get lost in the production. Maxwell is still in charge of the show. And of course, the man's vocals are just incredible. So no, this is not an album that if you're trying to look at it or compare it directly to its predecessor, you're going to be like, what is this? But standing on its own, and especially where we came from today, this album was 25 years ahead of its time. And absolutely one that's one of the best of the year. Coming in at number 5 is Brandy, Never Say Never. Man, I gotta watch out for what you call the Brandy fans, the brand Nubians, whatever you call them. I'm sure they're gonna be up in arms because anything that's not number 1 is not good enough for your girl. No shade to Brandy because this album is incredible. I just thought 4 were better because we're gonna celebrate that album right now. Because when Brandy was Brandy in 1998, man, we talking about stardom. She was America's sweetheart. She was coming off of Moesha. And again, this is another artist who had a lot to prove because she was in sophomore season trying to beat an album that was very well received. She absolutely beat it on this one. Easily. Knocked it out of the park. This album is where she really gelled with her legendary partnership with Darkchild. And they were creating just magic here and there. And this is another project that I missed in 1998 because I really wasn't feeling the singles that much. That Sitting on Top of the World was not the business for me. And then Angel in Disguise, dope song that we didn't get a video for. What was with 1998 and y'all not giving us videos? Tripping. Anyway, it took me a while to get on the albums, maybe about a year after it dropped. But man, what did I miss? Album cut after album cut after album cut. There are so many songs on this thing that deserve singles, in my opinion, that we missed out on. It's incredibly consistent and put together project. And it's one that stands up today. There's some fans, understandably, if you started listening to music 5 or 10 years ago, if you go back and listen to some of these albums with 2023 ears, it ain't gonna work. But this is an album that I think does stand the test of time because it's able to capture the moment, but it doesn't feel stuck in the moment. That right there is the makings of an album that endures, and Brandy did that with this one. Coming in at number 4, this might surprise you. Well, it might not surprise you if you know me. Is Tamia's 1998 debut. Tamia is an artist that just kind of popped out of nowhere. A lot of these artists on this list were established by 1998. We kind of knew who they were. They were around. Either they were doing background or doing a lot of features, or they were coming into their sophomore season of their career. Tamia just kind of popped up with Quincy Jones, and we heard her earlier on Missing You and a few songs a couple years prior, but she really hadn't done much to establish herself as a solo artist. Boy, she had no problem doing that here. She just boom, came out of the gate with great production and an album, in my opinion, that's pretty underrated. Maybe the most underrated on this list Because we know Tamia today is a lady with that lion dance that I still haven't figured out. But at the end of the day, she is a vocalist through and through. And this album not only showcases that, she also has some time for a little bit of fun. She's got some, it's not just all ballads. I love Imagination. I might be in the minority on that. I love what JD did with the production of that. And then she, of course, has just the vocals that just ascend. And that really accentuates everything on every track here. Every song hits because she is able to put power and emphasis and emotion behind it. It's an album you put on from number one, you let it play all the way to the end consistently because the sequencing is so great, her performances stand out, and there's no time to be skipping around because you don't want to miss a second of what she's saying. Probably the most underrated album on this list, so if you haven't heard it, get it right. Alright, now before we get to the top three, there are a bunch of other dope albums from 1998 I had to show love to. So, producer D Roth, put my people on and show them the honorable mentions. Let them know what's up. Coming in at number three, an album that's probably gonna get me in a little bit of trouble, but you're already here, so you're gonna have to deal with it. I love you too. It's 112 sophomore album, Room 112. I'm an unapologetic 112 stan when it comes to it because their albums, their first 3 album run, I don't care. You put it up, I will argue that that's one of the best 3 album runs in R&B history. In history. I said what I said. Their debut, stellar. This album, stellar. The next album, not quite, but still pretty stellar. Those boys had a run. And this album, in my opinion, was the best of the 3. It was pure Bad Boy magic because the magic of Bad Boy in this era was taking hip-hop, but taking established R&B, making them link like that, and putting magic together. So you had songs that were fresh, current, and they felt of the time, but also lean on the dynamics of R&B that made the structure sound, the harmonies were sound, the writing was incredible, the performances were great. See, this is all I asked for. That's all I want. I want to be able to dance a little bit. I want to feel sad a little bit. I want to feel happy a little bit. I want music that makes me feel something other than bored. And 112 delivered that in spades. It's an album that I think gets a little bit overlooked. I wouldn't say it's underrated per se because most folks know this album, but it does get overlooked for some other projects that came out this year. But hey, this list is here to tell you about dope stuff you missed. In my opinion, top 3 of 1998. 112 Boys did that. Y'all knew it was coming. Y'all knew it was coming. Coming in at number 2. My girl Kelly Price, Soul of a Woman. Again, if you know me, if you're familiar with soulandstereo.com, you know my history with this album. I will unapologetically say it's my favorite R&B, not one of the favorite R&B album of all time. I didn't say it was better than Songs in the Key of Life, so stay out of my DMs. I ain't saying it's better than what's going on. Leave me alone. But my personal favorite R&B album of all time is the one we're going to discuss today. Kelly Price was an enigma to me in 1998 because we had heard her voice a million times. She was the background of so many Bad Boy era records. More Money, More Problem, that's her. On More Money, More Problems. She was doing backgrounds for Mariah Carey. She was doing stuff on Puffy's 1997 album. She was everywhere. And I just could not believe that when the first single, Friend of Mine, dropped, I was like, who is this singing? What? I have never heard a voice as powerful, this rich, this soul stirring. Look, you said her man was stolen and she was gonna sing until like the rent was due. She was upset and you could hear it in her vocals. And as great as 1998 was for artists of all genres, this was a standout. I was completely blown away. And to this day, I'm still blown away by that performance. So I had to get this album. And when I finally tracked down the album and learned that she was an industry vet, she wasn't a new artist, and I put two and two together and realized that her voice was already part of so many songs that I already love, it made me fall in love with her even more. And this album, boy, this album. Song after song after song after song after song. No skips, because she nails every single performance. Every song is a different aspect of relationships being sung and delivered at the highest caliber. I know y'all like the remix with Mr. Biggs and the other man, but honestly, that might be one of my least favorite songs on the album because they kind of overshadow Kelly. I was here for Kelly, but it's a great song, classic video. Of course it gets love, and I show it love too. But we're talking about the overall projects. And in the overall scheme of things, from the writing to the absolutely incredible vocal performances, this album is a standout in 1998. You might not believe me, but it's my list too bad. One of the best, and your boy's favorite of all time. And coming in at number one, yes, here it is, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. You can't win with this album, because I will put this album on an R&B list and people will say, oh, that's not an R&B album, it's a rap album, she's rapping on it. I'll put it on a rap list. Oh my God, why you got this singing? This is singing, this is on the rap. It's both. Two things can be true. I know the internet told you that you can only pick one side and you must argue the other. Two things can be true. This is an R&B album and it's a hip hop album. And the argument for R&B is even stronger because it leans much more R&B. So in 98, of course, Lauryn Hill, we knew her as a star in the making. She had already shined on the previous Fugees projects. Again, one of my favorite albums of all time is The Score, 5-star project in itself. But that's for a 1996 combo. In 98, this was her opportunity to shine, and she took everything to the next level. The writing, the soulfulness, the absolutely street hip-hop. I will say that, in my opinion, she is still the best female MC of all time. I have not heard anybody beat her yet. Lyrically, she's just phenomenal. Delivery, phenomenal. And all of that is encapsulated here in this project, which really is a showcase of black womanhood. When it goes from the pain that she is going through in a relationship, or the joy of her child being born. All of that is being showcased here. And then sometimes she just got bars for these hater rappers too, to put them in their place. And I love it. I love some petty rapping. This album is everything I love, honestly, about music, because it's the telling of a person's story. And she does it absolutely well. I know for some reason in this era, people don't like the album because of her personal problems, and I understand that, but I'm here to just look at the music. I can't talk about her as a person. Also, I know that some people don't like it because she's slut shaming, player. I don't think it's slut shaming. I think she's trying to encourage. Whether you agree with her message or not, I did not come off as an attack on a person. It's a lifting up. If you don't want to be lifted up, cool, do what you want. But again, we're talking about the music. And if we're specifically talking about the music, you're not going to find a better album in 1998 than The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I said what I said. Alright, that's it. The 10 best R&B albums with a few honorable mentions of 1998. Some of my favorites of all time are listed right here on this list. Shout out to Kelly. Shout out to Nicole Ray. She was an honorable mention. 112 player. Oh, so much great stuff in this year. But now it's time for me to hear from you. What are your favorites of 98? What didn't make the list that should have? How would you rearrange it? Brandy stands, just come on. Just come on. Go nuts in the comments. I know y'all are coming. But this edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions is a wrap. I'm going to hop in the DeLorean. I'm going to go back to 98. Gas up the thing. Gas is only $1. Won't take much gas to do that. Find me some of those Shark Bite fruit snacks back when candy was dope. Man, everything was dope in 98. Play on, players.